Hello, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our emergency management webinar series today. We're talking today about what's new in emergency management operations solution here at Esri. I'm excited to have you with us today, and thanks for joining. My name is Ryan Lenkloss. I'm the Director of Public Safety Solutions here at Esri, and I've got a great team of folks with us today to share what's new, to show you what it looks like, but also talk a bit about what's ahead. So we're going to leave you with a little bit of a look forward for us in public safety and specifically emergency management as we go into the latter part of 2019. So thanks for joining. I'm glad you guys are with us this morning. With me today is Jeff Barani. He's our emergency management technical lead here at Esri. He'll be talking about the solution itself. We'll show you what it looks like and really dive into the what's new. If you've joined us previously on these webinars, you'll get a deeper look at what that means. And also with us today, I'm glad to have Walter Potts and Lindsay Thomas. Both work on our solutions team with us here. They are the brains behind the engine, so to speak, that's really driving the development of these solutions for us that you'll see. They're going to be fielding questions today in the back end as well. So as we go through the webinar today, you can certainly ask questions of any of us along the way. We'll be sure to answer as many as we can. To do that, how would you ask questions of us? So please use your chat window. Everybody's been muted today on the line just for the sake of the webinar, but certainly use the chat window inside of GoToWebinar to ask us any questions you may have of the team at any point. And again, we'll try to answer as many as we can as we move throughout the webinar today. So do those, we'll respond to you. If there are questions that we think are really broadly applicable to the community at large here for everybody attending, we'll share that answer out with everybody. So you'll see some of that conversation ongoing in the chat window throughout the webinar. We are going to record today, so this will be posted online after we're done this morning. So you'll be able to share that, reference it back as well as we talk through this. And you'll get an email following up with a few links to resources we think will be useful for you, as well as some other actions that we hope you'll find useful for the work that you're doing to get better prepared for the upcoming wildfire and hurricane season and flood season in front of us. So with that, let's get started. I do have a poll question to kind of start us off. The evolution of this conversation started last July. Just before our user conference, we hosted a webinar here that was actually unveiling the operations solution for folks here at Esri. And so I would like to just get a sense for those that are attending. Have you attended a previous session on our solution for emergency management? Just simple yes or no, just to give us a bit of insight into the audience. That'll tell us where we might want to spend a little more time talking about how we got to where we are today versus maybe what's new. So in front of you, you'll see a screen. Yes, no, or not sure if I've attended a session before. So just take a moment, if you would, select the one that's most appropriate for you, and then we'll take a look at the results here, and then we'll proceed on with the webinar. So I'll give you just a minute to finish that out. All right, let's take a look and see the results here. All right, so a lot of it looks like the majority of folks have attended. Or not sure, so that's good. A lot of no's, that's perfect. We're glad you're with us today. So we are happy that you've all joined us. We are ready to kind of dig into this. So we'll spend a bit of time for those that it's your first time. If you're not sure or no, we're glad to have you with us for the first time. We'll be talking a bit about how we got to where we are today. And for those that are have visited us with before, I hope you'll find some interest as well. So let's start at the very beginning and just talk a little bit about how we arrived at today. Looking at the evolution of Esri as a company, it's funny, this is our 50th year as a company here at Esri. It's a nice milestone for us to celebrate as a birthday. And 25 years ago, this is actually the birth of the Esri Disaster Response Program within Esri. So we're celebrating our 25th birthday and our 50th birthday as a company this year. And one of the reasons that Esri was founded originally was to help solve some of the world's most difficult problems. And specific to us today, what we're passionate about as a team here in public safety is obviously helping you when disaster strikes and providing you as much support as we can to get through that response and ultimately learn the lessons that you need to apply to be better prepared. Now, that 25 years of history has been pretty interesting for us. You know, it started back in 1994. The first time that we actually deployed some folks out to help with disaster operations was the Northridge earthquake in California. And I would say that, you know, this 25 years of history has been an interesting journey because we have learned so much from you as our users. We have learned about ways to make our technology better, to deliver capabilities to the market that are better, but also just how we can better support you with this disaster response program. And I would say that even though 2017 for us was our busiest year on record, so out of that 25 years of history, in 2017 we responded to almost 500 requests for assistance in that year. that was kind of our culmination point. We're at the busiest new normal that we have ever experienced at Esri in 2017. That's not really stopped. And so I thought I would just share a few things for those that have joined us last year, may have missed the January webinar. We've been very busy as a team. Looking at the end of last year, a lot of support for the Camp Fire in Butte County, California. So looking at the county, working with CAL FIRE as well, just supporting them and making sure they had everything they needed from a capabilities perspective. Especially what we're looking at here is the damage assessment. So all the red that you see are individual structures that were destroyed. So just devastating impacts visually to see on the map here. But more importantly, about the capability that they were able to share information between multiple organizations responding to this devastating wildfire, and use these technologies we're going to be talking about today, these tools that we're going to be sharing with you today to conduct a damage assessment in a rapid fashion. So Camp Fire and CAL FIRE specifically in this process is just a really strong user in this area. So a good model to explore. We'll share links to these applications so you can see them after. This year, 2019, has started off on a busy way. We're working both domestically with the floods in the Midwest, which we'll talk about. We're also looking internationally right now. So looking at the cyclone that hit into Africa, going into Malawi and Mozambique and the like. So what we're looking at now is some dam monitoring that's ongoing, supporting a few of our users internationally. They're supporting the response and relief efforts there in country. And so we're looking at an integration of OpenStreetMap data that's being crowdsourced for buildings and points of interest in these areas in relation to where there might be dam failures as a result of the heavy rains and runoff that they're experiencing there in certain areas, and helping with a bit of decision support to understand how many facilities, how many buildings, and eventually how many people might be impacted as a result of these different areas. And then certainly the Midwest flooding, right? So I think you see it in the news. The predictions are that that's going to continue on throughout the year. So we certainly are helping with things like just understanding what the scope and the magnitude of this is. We've seen a lot of great users. So I hope some of you are on the line today around the Midwest and Nebraska and Kansas and Iowa, just doing tremendous work with situational awareness, with using tools in the field for damage assessment and the like. And so just thanks for what you're doing out there in the community at large. Let us know how we can help you. Just wanted to give you a sense of what we're working today and some of the big events that have happened over the last 6 months for us as we, as a team, continue to learn and evolve. Now that program is all about helping you when your capacity is exceeded. That program, if you've never heard about it before, just want to take a moment to make sure you know that we're here to support you during that response. We can provide you with access to additional software to implement some of the workflows that we're going to talk about today in detail, access and processing of geospatial data like imagery or drone imagery, for example, and access to premium tech support. So making sure that your mission critical applications are being responsive, that they're working well, and making sure that we're investing our time to see you be successful. And if you ever need assistance from us, you can do that in 2 ways. One is visit us online, esri.com/disaster. You can go and request assistance. You'll see the big blue button in the top right corner of every page. Just click that button. You can fill out the request form, and that's triaged by our team 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we'll respond to you immediately back to let you know that we've received it, and then we'll start to work through that process with you to get you the support you need. You can also email us, so disaster_help@esri.com will also alert the team that's on standby. We'll again reply back to that. We'll start triaging the requests that you have and make sure that we can provide the support you need, whatever that might be. So just make sure you've got a couple of bookmarks set, a couple of emails set, so if you need us, you know we're there to support you. So taking all of those lessons learned, looking back over those 25 years of history, we also want to make sure that we're taking the time now when we're not in the middle of a disaster to think about preparedness. And that's really what we're talking about today with the Emergency Management Operations Solution. We looked back over those requests for assistance over that 25-year period. We talked to a lot of you as our users in the community to give us feedback and gather business needs and requirements from you around different workflows that emergency managers go through. And what we came up with was a list of 6 common challenges that you've asked us to help address. So that's everything from starting to understand the potential impact from an incident when a forecast is released, for example, of a flood or a hurricane that's coming through and the cone of uncertainty appears. What does that potentially mean for you? How many people? What types of facilities are under that area of concern? And then certainly helping then to put a plan into place. So taking the binder, so to speak, off the shelf of the plan for that incident and actually starting to deploy those resources in a map-based way to address what you're seeing in real time coming in. And then certainly I think situational awareness is so important. You've asked us to help with that, is these rapidly changing conditions, as forecasts continue to change, as traffic conditions continue to change, and so forth? How do you continue to monitor in real time the sensors that are around us telling us what's going on so that you can modify that plan dynamically as opposed to sitting back and being passive? So how do we monitor that and take action? And then certainly, how do we assess and report damage? So a really critical transition point from response and recovery is how do we understand the impact, quantify that impact, document the impact so that we can access recovery funds and certainly move that through the process? And how do we do that in a way that may be disconnected in the field when there's no cell connectivity and so forth? And then how do we keep everybody on the same page throughout all of that process? So there are, certainly good case studies about how we collect information, but how do we present it in an actionable way? And I would say that many of you would talk to us about your challenges with the operational briefs that you do during each operational period. So it's, hitting pause, so to speak, creating a PowerPoint that may be static and submitting screenshots and information to a PowerPoint slide that's used for the brief that's immediately out of date because the incident around us continues to evolve. So how can we help you with more real-time operational briefs that are taking in all of this information that's being fed to us from the field, from the sensors, and from our partners? And ultimately, I think the last part, which is so critical, is you've asked us to help with how we can communicate effectively with the public and with the media. So how can we help, number one, make sure the message is compelling so that people take action, but also to make sure that it's there to withstand the load. So when the media picks it up, when people start to look to you for the authoritative voice during your response, that that website will stand up to the load that's coming in as social media and viewers start to pick it up and share it virally across the web. So those 6 things are what we're going to dig into today. We're going to take a look at different solution templates that we have. We're going to talk about how they work together as a cohesive system, but I just want to take a moment and just boil that 6 points down into 3 things I want you to write down and take away. And these are 3 important things. I think these are the 3 areas of focus. These are 3 different areas of capabilities I think you really should be thinking about to be better prepared. And the first is all about how do we maintain situational awareness. So this is about using things like our operations dashboard for ArcGIS to aggregate feeds of information, to set your metrics or KPIs that are thresholds to tell you when to pay attention or when to take action. It's real time, right? So that's about monitoring these changing conditions if you think back to the challenge that you've asked us to help address. And then certainly putting that plan into action. So the second thing we're going to talk about for situational awareness is taking the plan off the shelf, putting it into a map-based form that allows you to move the chess pieces, so to speak, around the board in reaction to what you see from the planning process and what you're seeing from the real-time situational awareness that you're gaining access to in that dashboard. And then the third component is briefing everybody so that when you move that chess piece on the board or when the map is updated because the new weather alert comes out or the flood shifts a bit on the map, what does that mean? So how do we put that back in the context of an incident briefing that is dynamic, is real time, so as you go to the next chapter or the next page in the book for the briefing, that map is current, the context and your voice and the narrative you're putting forward, and that is relative to that information. So this is all about helping you anticipate your next move, make better decisions that hopefully help you save lives and property. So we're going to talk about and we'll show you these applications. Now, the second big area to write down and be focused on is really around the idea of damage assessment and really understanding the impact. And there's 2 elements of this. The first is pre-incident. So when you get that cone of uncertainty that comes in, or you have the flood polygon or the alert or warning that gets issued, or you've got an area of interest that you want to delineate on a map, how can you immediately get reporting back that tells you who and what might be impacted under that area of concern? So what you see on the left-hand side is what we call our situational awareness viewer. It is taking that real-time data feed and using that to then understand the impact. So in this case, you see demographics and requests, how many schools may be affected. So we'll talk about that. We'll look at that in action. But this is about helping you right size and understand the scale, the complexity of the event as you're starting to get information in so that you can be better prepared to respond to it when it occurs. And then on the right-hand side of the screen, what we're talking about is the damage assessment process. This is all about putting people into the field in both connected or disconnected environments, using standardized forms that allow you to collect the information about the damage itself, to capture the documentation with photographic evidence of what that damage looks like in the field at that point in time and at that location, and submitting that back in, again, in real time where you have connectivity so that the dashboard you see starts to update with indicators around the status of damage, the different levels of damage, but also the estimated damage. So we'll talk about what that looks like. So that threshold is being monitored and met. So with lives and people at risk on this side, these recovery funds are so important. So we just need to make sure that we can help you in many ways. So you'll take some notes about damage assessment would be the next major area of focus for today. And the last thing to write down and take notes on is managing the flow of public information. So how do we disseminate the right information to people who need it most? How do we raise their awareness before the event happens to be ready? And when they need to take action, how do we drive them to take action? Such a critical component. And so what we're going to talk about is how you can manage public information maps that provide valuable context to the operational decisions that you're making and the information that's being disseminated through your public information office. So again, this is about your authoritative voice, providing map-based context for citizens and putting it on an application that is responsive so that it works on a tablet or a mobile phone device when they're evacuating or in a car, or they're sitting at their home and they're looking at it on a nice big screen. It should work well in any of those environments. And so we'll talk a bit about that application and some lessons learned around that and what's new for that area. So that's the offering. So those of you who are new, have never visited us before, that's a bit of where we've come, how we got here, the lessons that we've learned and we're continuing to learn, and how we can deliver this emergency management operations integrated system for you. And so I'm going to turn it over at this point to Jeff, but before we do, I do want to ask a question of you because some of you have attended before, and I'm curious to know, out of those that have attended before, or those of you, even if you've never attended and you've started to explore our solutions at Esri, I'm curious if you could just give us a bit of insight to what you're using today. So I have a second poll question I'd like your input on, and that is, which solution templates have you deployed already? So you can select all that apply. We've talked about a few of these. We'll show you these in more detail. So there's a list of them here. It's the operations response viewer. It's the incident briefing, doing initial damage assessment, the situation awareness viewer to understand impact, and the public information application that you've seen as well. So if you would take a moment, select as many as apply to you in here. That'll give us a bit of sense of where you're at, because this helps us also know where to focus our time and effort, and we'll use this as good input for us as a team as we go forward. So I'll give you just a minute to select all that apply if you've already deployed these or started to explore them today. So I'll give you just a minute to do that. All right, so let's take a look at the results and see where we're at. Excellent, so a pretty even balance, so that's interesting. So damage assessment and situation awareness viewer, excellent. The top two, operations response, so people that are using it to move the chess pieces around the map, that's excellent. So pretty even balance, that's really helpful for us. So thanks for taking the time to give us a bit of your input on that. That'll help as we spend a bit of time and focus in and out, maybe focus on a few things where you've not deployed these solutions at scale before. That'll help us. All right, so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jeff Barani, who's gonna talk a bit about what's new with these solution templates. We'll also get a look at these solutions at work, so you get a sense of what they look like visually. With that, Jeff, the floor is all yours. Thank you, sir.
Great. Thank you, Ryan, and yeah, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. First of all, this morning, we want to go through and just do a quick demonstration to recap what some of the capabilities are that are provided by these solution templates here that we're talking about. First of all, what we're looking at here is the incident status dashboard. So in the Operations Center, staff need to be able to monitor current conditions and key metrics in both blue and gray sky days. This allows operations staff to have a current understanding of the situation at a quick glance. Here we're looking at a configuration of the operations dashboard to show current conditions for Baltimore, Maryland. We can see, live feeds of information, like weather and the like. We can even, zoom back out and get more of a regional view and get an understanding of what's going on by adding in, additional live feeds like, weather radar, snow forecasts, and the like. But the other key thing that I want to highlight here is look at the current flooding here that we have in a hypothetical scenario along the Jones River. And this is kind of the scenario incident that we're going to run through the next, couple of series of apps. So here we can see kind of the current, conditions, all of the shelters that have been opened, and obviously quite a bit here from a scenario perspective in this area, the number of open shelters, the current occupancy, and some of the other key metrics like, this number of road closures that are set up, current points of distribution, mission-ready packages, or mission-ready packages and the like. And really the key idea here is this application really helps us monitor live feeds in kind of a real-time way. It allows staff to come into the Operations Center at a quick glance and get an idea of what's going on, not only from a mapping perspective, but some of the key performance metrics that go along, with this, to get a better sense of the current, situation. So this may be the view that many have set up in their command center to get an idea of what's, going on. And then in parallel to this, we can use here the operations response viewer to provide staff the ability to update and edit information without having to go through the GIS staff to keep this information current and up to date. These updates can be made available not only to this viewer here, but the incident status dashboard that I just showed, story maps, and other apps throughout the system. So in this case, for example, a couple of things here to look at. If we were to add in, if additional resources became available as a part of the this incident, perhaps there's other data that we're going to mark up on the map. If additional resources we wanted to add in and the like. The other key thing here to note is that we can update the status of some of this information. So, for example, if I'm going to click on this shelter here, I can change the status of it and simply, start to input and update some of this, information here. So I'll go back to the Smart Editor widget here, and it gives me the ability to update some of the key information that may be kind of important. So if I simply just update the status from closed to open now, given that I have the capabilities or permissions to make these edits, those edits will be made available more broadly, kind of throughout the system. So if we flip back to the incident status dashboard, this number will update here to show the current number of shelters that are now available as the results of some of those operations. This viewer also has a couple of other capabilities to highlight here. We've got the ability to find the closest resource and route and find out who may be kind of closest and available to help us and the like. And this, in my mind, this application is essentially the editing app of the system that can allow not only GIS staff but operations staff to really help keep the current status up to date so others can see it throughout the kind of response community. The next app I'd like to focus on now and take a look at is Situational Awareness Viewer. As Ryan mentioned, this viewer is really great for helping us understand the potential impact of this event. For example, if we take our flooding scenario here along the Jones River, I'm using the Incident Info Summary widget here. I clicked on our current flooding extent, and I can use this now to set the location for the Situational Awareness widget. And in just a couple of clicks here now, I'm able to better see the potential impact of this flooding event. I can see that within a mile of the flooded area, there's 34 schools, 30 shelters, 6 hospitals and the like. And so with just a couple of quick clicks here, I'm able to quickly get a sense of the potential impact of this event. And this is really important from a decision-making process because it helps us understand the potential impact. Are we going to need a lot of resources to help with this event, or just a few? From a functionality perspective, also note that there's a couple of other useful tools inside this particular application. We can create a report if we need to send an email or otherwise, share this information in terms of the facilities that are impacted. We can quickly generate a report with not only the textual information, but also a map will pop in here in just a sec that we're able to share. We can also archive this information off in a couple of different ways of the current situation. We can export the data out as CSV of the potential impact, or create a snapshot and basically take a look at what's going on with this incident at this particular time. And this will actually save off the data in a separate set of feature classes that we can go back and look at, after the event and see what's going on and looking at that. So really kind of the key things here is help us understand who and what might be impacted, and being able to kind of create reports and showing what's happened at any kind of period of time. Next, let's transition to looking at things from a damage assessment perspective. So a couple of applications here. First of all, we have the operations dashboard here, where we can see the current results of the damage assessment process that's already kind of been conducted. So this is the information that's come in from the field already. And this is then paired with information coming in from Survey 123. So Survey 123 is an app that works in both a connected and disconnected mode. And the key points here is we can use this app to collect information very quickly and get it in from the field. Obviously, this is running on my laptop here. There's works on Windows, Android, iOS, so basically works on multiple different platforms here. So I'll go in and select my location here for this event. If we've got GPS connectivity on the device, that will be leveraged as a part of this. But in this case, I'm just going to set the location for the house along the Jones River. That will be the location I set. And what we're looking at here is basically the types of information that we'd want to collect in a kind of a traditional paper form, whether that's the address information here that we're going to fill out, what's the extent of damage, those basically some of the key indicators that you may traditionally collect on a paper form. We can now do that in here in a digital way and fill out that information and really kind of keep that information focused to the types of things that folks are looking for. We can also associate photos or videos with this. So in this case, I'm going to just go and pick a picture here from my phone, or excuse me, from my laptop, but this could just as easily be from the phone on your smartphone and be able to collect and share this information. So given that I have connectivity, I can then go ahead and submit this information, and this will show back up here in the dashboard here in just a couple of seconds once the updates all kind of come through. And not only will my counts update as a result of this work, but also some of the indicators and sums, indicator widgets will update as well to go along with the updates that we had just submitted here coming in from the device. And you just saw some of the numbers update as a part of that process. Getting information out to the public, that is another key part of the value of what these tools provide, as Ryan mentioned. So here we're looking at the public information map template. It's a great way to get information out to the public on the current status of the incidents, essentially resources to help keep the public safe, and current conditions. Oftentimes the public is looking for current information just like those in the command center. So here we can see at a quick glance, a text description of what's going on, the legend information to kind of go along with it. One of the recent additions is the addition of the Near Me widget inside here. So basically allows us to click on the map and see what are the nearby incidents or open shelters that are nearby, and this is great information to be shared with the public. And then finally, another key thing is given that we want to share this information with the public, if we want to tweet out a link to this app or embed it in our Facebook page, we make that really simple here as the part of the process to help get out this information in a real scalable way. And finally, kind of bringing it all back together here from a briefing perspective, right? Instead of having to print out paper maps every operational period, we can brief teams here in real time using this story map here that rolls up many of the applications, kind of an app of apps, if you will. So we can use the same information that we're using from an operational perspective, we can use for briefings here to provide context and help kind of explain the situation. So really quickly, we just wanted to recap the value that these templates provide in helping folks kind of respond to and be better prepared for some of the hazards that they face in their jurisdiction. So that was a recap from a functionality perspective. And now what we want to do is we want to look at things from a what's new perspective. So you've kind of seen kind of how things work, but now we really want to highlight some of the things that have changed over the recent releases. There's a lot of updates that were made in the January release and a couple of additions that were made by Walt and Lindsay and the team during the March release, and we want to kind of give a little bit more details kind of behind the scenes of all that. So, when Ryan showed a high-level kind of slide that showed how all these apps work together, and I sort of wanted to peel back at a little bit more detail of how these apps, work together. Obviously, the Esri Geospatial Cloud is at the center of this, or it could be your enterprise implementation, all the apps kind of all working together with the operational data that come along with it. One of the ways to kind of get started and to lay down all of these capabilities really quickly is using this, what we call the solution deployment tool. So this is a tool that you can add into your Pro instance. You see that there on the Share tab. You'll see ArcGIS Solutions. And this will really help you lay down those capabilities and all those apps and maps, very quickly. You go through a task-based process to sign into your organization, choose the apps that you want to deploy. Just a quick note here, there by default, this there's a checkbox here under this hamburger button to use existing items within inside your organization. So basically that means you can add on additional apps as a part of this. If you just wanted to play and have your own sandbox, maybe you uncheck that checkbox just to kind of test these out. But I just wanted to highlight that function is there. Next, you go through and select the various solution templates that you want to deploy in your organization, and this deployment tool will then get all of these going with inside your own ArcGIS Online account and lay down all the components for them. So basically what that means is when you go and look at my content, you'll see all of the resultant applications, web apps, and feature services that were laid down by these tools. And oh, by the way, there is some good documentation in the link that's above here about all the components that they're laid down as a part of these. So we'll share these links with you at the end of the webcast and share that information with you. But I just wanted to kind of give a look of what's there. One of the really key things that we wanted to highlight that changed in the January release is that the feature layers in the solution template were restructured a bit, and this was done for a couple of different purposes. One, to allow for quickly archiving events as they happened. You could quickly archive off events so you're prepared for the next incident. This also allows you to be ready, be able to do after action reports and the like, and go back and what the data look like. So what that means is you basically don't have to do a whole lot of work from an app perspective to be ready for the next incident. You don't have to redeploy these and the like. And I'll show you how this is done here in just a few minutes. But what I additionally wanted to highlight here is there's a view structure that's been put in place. So we're basically taking advantage of the view functionality of feature layers here to make this work. So the kind of key here is that if there's no suffix behind the feature layer, that really kind of represents the parent or normal layer. And in most cases, those are editable, just like I made updates there in the operations response viewer. And but in most cases, those layers aren't public, right? And that's what we want. We don't want the public editing, that data. But by default, the solution templates or the solution deployment tool creates a public view of each of the layers. So what that means is you can share that in a different way. You can make it so it's not editable, and the public would have access to that information. And then there's also this concept of an active layer. So the example here is for the incident locations, feature classes and feature services. So there'll be an active view of that layer. Basically, there's a filter inside here that says, incident equals active, yes, no. And that's the filter that's been set up for the kind of current, set of incidents, and allows us to kind of manage that, active layer. After an incident happens, we can quickly archive that information off, and so we've got that to look at, kind of post-event and being able to play back. And then additionally, there's a public view that is set up, or a view that's set up that can be shared publicly of that same kind of active information. So this, I realize this is kind of a in the weeds and some inside baseball, kind of behind the scenes, but this is a really important, kind of construct for how all of the layers are structured and organized, and really how they work together, in a system. So there'll be a same set of feet. So another point here is that all the feature services that are laid down are used by multiple applications. So for example, shelters, for example, that feature service is visible and incident briefing, incident status dashboard, public information, situational awareness, etc. So just kind of using this eye chart here, you can get a sense of how the different feature layers are used across the different solution templates. And then there's various views that are set up as a part of all of this. Obviously, this can be changed and configured to meet your needs and help you kind of set that up. But this was a really big change that was put in place kind of behind the scenes in the January release, and something that we really wanted to emphasize with you today as some of the new updates that were made. So continuing on and kind of looking at the what's new on a template by template basis, what I've done here is just basically highlighting some of the information from the what's new section of each of the solution templates. So for the incident status dashboard, a couple of key things that we wanted to call out. One, the demographics layer and the emergency assistance layers have been removed from the widgets. That was some of the feedback we had gotten from the user community, and those were a couple of the layers that were removed from the dashboard. So if you notice that during the demo, that demographics, for example, was no longer there, that was one of the key things that has been moved. And again, some of this information just really kind of represents how the feature services behind the scenes were updated to reflect some of the changes and updates that were made here. Moving on to what's new in the operations response viewer, again, some of that maintenance to update a lot of the feature classes, restructuring. A couple of other key things to highlight here in yellow. The About widget's been added to really remind folks of the workflows that this app is really intended for. The Batch Editor widget has been put in, and this is the tool that you can use to support the historical archiving and taking advantage of those views that have been put in place, and I'll show you that on the next slide. And then finally, the Edit widget has been upgraded to use the Smart Editor widget that has a little bit more functionality, and we've gotten good feedbacks from folks on how that's a little bit more powerful for them. So the idea here is, and I've got this in slide form, so after an incident or an event were to happen, we can use the archive incident tool here that basically allows us to select the features in view and then change the value of that from in this case from an active incident. If we want to set this to no, this will drop out of our active incident view and no longer be visible. It's not deleting the data, it's just moving it to a different state with a different tag. So now that essentially clears our viewers and makes us ready for the next event. So we're off and running to be able to use that for the next incident. So that's achieved behind the scenes using the Batch Editor widget that's just been renamed, in this case Archive Incident, to support the workflow. So that's how it's done, and this is a key update again that was made in the January release that we wanted to make sure got conveyed to you all. And then, as I mentioned, the About widget here provides a little bit more instructions for folks on the functionality of this viewer. And as you deploy this inside your own organizations, obviously you'd be welcome to edit this and configure this, add this as this makes sense, but at least gives you a starting point from an operations response perspective. Another key thing that happened in the recent releases is the Symbology was updated. So that means a couple of different things. One, the kind of emergency management symbol set has been recast and renamed into public safety. So this is a broader update from the team that works on symbols inside Esri to incorporate other areas of public safety as well, like law enforcement, fire service, etc. So other symbols are inside there. So it didn't really kind of go away. It just got rolled up and renamed. So that was done not only on the web side but on the pro side as well, and a couple of highlights. Also, a couple of additional incident type symbols have been added to the collection, and this will be continued to build out over additional releases, especially with feedback from the user community. So just wanted to highlight a couple things there from a Symbology perspective. From the situational awareness viewer perspective, Um, a couple of key things, obviously, a lot of the housekeeping that went in place with updating the feature services and feature layers, behind the scenes. Demographics has been removed. One of the biggest things here in recent releases was the addition of the info summary widget. So if you saw that, remember that from the demonstration that we gave here. The info summary widget is a great way to kind of at a glance provide summary information of some of the data that you see there in the event. That I was able to click on the Baltimore flooding here really quickly that showed the pop-up, and then I said set location from there to quickly then do the analysis there with inside this widget. So I think that's a great addition of what's been added back in from an info summary perspective. From dashboards and from what's new in the damage assessment template, a view's been set up specifically for you can treat the damage assessment data in a different way if you want to share that publicly. Also took advantage of some new updates in Survey 123 to automatically populate the U.S. National Grid coordinates when you click on the map. I don't know if you caught that when I was doing the demonstration, but just relying on some of the updates there on the Survey 123 side to automatically populate that layer. And the U.S. National Grid overlay layer has been removed now that we have the coordinates inside there to go along with it. And a couple things from of what's new in the public information template to highlight. One, a couple of additional widgets have been updated. The share widget's been brought back in the most recent release, as well as bookmarks. The pop-ups have been modified to take advantage of Arcade a little bit more and put some color in there and spice those up a little bit more. In the January release, the Near Me widget was added to provide more functionality for the public, and so those were a couple of the key updates that were made there from the public information side. From an incident briefing perspective, if you saw the incarnation of this in the releases from last year that used the story map journal template, now we've seen the user community more leaning towards using the story map series application. So that was one way that this incident briefing template has been updated. Also note that this does get laid down now with the solution deployment tool. It didn't always used to be that way, but it does get laid down with the solution deployment tool. But note there, as that bottom statement states, there's a couple of additional steps to fully configure the solution if you're using the deployment tools, basically to update some of the links as those kind of get laid down. But there was a couple of important changes that were made there that are worth mentioning. Emergency management maps. To me, what's really compelling here is this Pro package is essentially a client now to the ArcGIS Online hosted feature services, just like the other app. So when this gets deployed by default, it's wired to the hosted services by default. It used to be last year that you had to go in and swizzle, technical term there, and change the data from the file GUDB to the hosted feature services. But now those are all kind of wired in by default. So what that means is if you still need to print a map or go disconnected with this Pro project, you can, you're wired into the hosted services by default. So as changes get made, like for example in the operations response viewer, those are immediately visible there in the emergency management maps if that's something that you're looking to use. Also wanted to highlight, and we'll share these links with you after we're done with a webinar. There's a couple of key additional resources that I think are worth mentioning. One, there's a blog post that Kelly Jarrow on the ArcGIS Online team put together for us for best practices for high demand or viral apps. So this is a really good thing to take a look at. I mean, as you're sharing information with the public, using the hosted feature services, there's some best practices there to follow, and to make sure that if your app gets picked up by CNN or the media outlets, that you're following best practices to kind of stand up to the load. We're setting you on a good path for success with the way that the solution deployment tools lay down the public information template for you, but there's additional things to take a look at there. And then also, many of the solution templates here are wired with just a couple of the live feeds that are available as a part of the Living Atlas, and there's a blog post from Dan on that team that kind of talks through some of the many other live feeds that are out there and available that you could quickly add into these applications based on what's germane to your jurisdiction, whether that's snowfall forecasts or wind forecasts or wildfires or whatever the case may be. There are a couple of other things to highlight there. So just a couple of things in closing here from my side before I turn it into Walt. One, what we've shared with you today really represents a baseline set of capabilities. It's a great place to get going with using the technology and using the solution templates to support the operations mission inside your emergency management agency. Obviously, there's more that you can do if you choose to add in or configure your own data within these templates or connect to various business systems or other live feeds that are out there, and this really can represent a starting point. Another thing to think about is this may be a great way to have, start conversations either with your boss or operations staff inside the emergency management section. This may spurn ideas from them in terms of other things that they'd like to see added or brought, in here. And also, as Ryan mentioned, at the beginning, these kind of patterns of use are really battle tested. We've seen folks implement applications, that support these functions in many different, disasters. And unfortunately, we see new good examples all the time. The recent flooding, as Ryan mentioned, or other events that folks are facing. Again, these patterns of use are definitely validated from each event. So certainly from my perspective, I hope you learned something today that you can take home and apply in getting these ready to go. And I hope that this will help you be better prepared for the disasters that you may face in your jurisdiction, whether that's spring flooding, wildfires, or hurricane season that's just 57 days away now. So with that, I'll end here, and I'll turn it over to Walt Potts from the solutions team to talk about what's coming and what's next from his perspective. So over to you, Walt.
All right, very good. Thank you, Jeff. Thanks also for the nice overview. Well done about all the changes that we've implemented in the last few months. Yeah, I wanted to kind of give you guys an idea about some of the solution ideas that we're working on for later this year. A couple of them here under the heading Enhanced Solutions is a new one we're calling the Daily Briefing at this point. That's what we're calling it anyway. But the idea behind this particular solution is that we want to be able to give you guys a way to look at what's going on either during blue skies, in other words, there's no active incidents, or sometimes called gray skies when there is an active incident or the EOC or Emergency Operations Center has been activated. So just kind of a continual view of the situational awareness, whatever the situation might be at that particular time. So that's a new one that we're going to be working on. Another one that we've gotten some feedback on, we find might be interesting, is a new hub initiative. Those of you that are familiar with ArcGIS Hub, it's a capability technology that we can leverage to share and engage the public in information regarding incidents. So for example, if you think about the flooding that's happened here recently in the Midwest, you can see like where is it evacuations are ordered or not, when were they ordered. Perhaps you might get some other information about from FEMA or somebody else, some up-to-date information about what's going on in your area. So that's a way for communities to be able to engage the public, the citizens around them, the general public about what's happening. So we're going to be working on that, and if those of you that might be interested, working together with us, helping us define what the requirements are for that, we'd be interested in hearing from you, so you can reach out to us. A couple of new learn lessons as well that we're working on. One of them right now I'm calling the Implement Emergency Operations Management Operations. It's how do I implement all that stuff that Jeff just showed me using the deployment tool and those things that he showed you. So we're going to be working on a learn lesson. Those of you that have not heard about it, you can just go to learn.arcgis.com. There are a ton of learn lessons out there that are free and that you can access and get an idea about how you can use the software. Well, this one in particular would be focusing on implementing all those applications that Jeff just showed you. And so we're expecting to have that one done in June. The other ones you see on the list, like gain situational awareness, manage operation response, conduct damage assessments, those I expect they're going to be in the form of story maps that we will add to the solution site, so that you can give end users an idea how they can actually use the technology, the capabilities like Jeff just showed. How do I go in and select set location for my incident, and so on. How does that information get updated? So on, things like that. So it's for end users as opposed to the ArcGIS person that might be implementing it. We probably will also include that in some blog posts as well. So it's just ways for us to communicate to you all about how you can use these tools. So that gives you kind of an overview of idea of some of the tools and some of the learn lessons that we're going to be working on for the rest of this year. If you have other ideas, it'd be good to hear from you and reach out to us. We'll give you some links here at the end of the session and show you how you can reach out to us and let us know what you think on that. So it gives an overview, at least, of what's coming. Ryan, you want to finish off here?
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Walt. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think, as Walt just described, I think we have in our minds, listening to you, a good sense of where we should be focusing our efforts. But I want to take a moment and just, having had you experience where we are today, a little bit what was new in January, and then as Walt just laid out a little bit where we're headed, we definitely want to give you a chance right now to give us direct feedback. So if you would, we're going to ask a poll question, which is, where would you like to see us focus our efforts on future enhancements? So in this case, what I'm asking you is just, could you select the one that is most important to you on the list here? I realize these are general capabilities. That's the intent of this question. So if you think we should spend more time working on situation awareness capabilities, if you just let us know, or let's dig more into damage assessment moving forward, let us know. So give us a bit of your insight as to where you want us to put effort with this. So take a moment, look at the list. There's 4 options there to choose from, and then if you would, just go ahead and select the one that's most important to you. When you get done with that, so each of you are going to select your option there. When we close out today on the webinar, you're going to get a survey immediately at the end. You'll have a chance there in that survey to actually fill out and give us a bit more insight as to what you mean. So if you selected situation awareness, take a moment in that survey at the end to give us your feedback. So what specifically do you want us to dig into for situation awareness, or for damage assessment, or public information, or briefings? That's really insightful for us, and that'll help inform where we put our time and effort moving forward. So let's take a look at the results, and then we'll close out for the webinar today. All right, so overwhelming majority, 60% in situation awareness. So that's a broad category, deliberately again in the poll here. So again, I would just encourage you, for each of you, no matter where you answered, take the time when you get to the very end today to share a bit of your insights into the survey at the very end. All right, so let's close out with some next steps. One of the things that we have really focused on in the conversation this morning is enabling you to do it yourself. We want to make sure that you understand where to focus your efforts in these broad capability areas, what solution templates we have that you can deploy now to deliver that capability for organizations, and then kind of the what's new. But some of you are probably looking for a bit of help in doing that. And so I just want to say that we're there to help you with that as well. So if you want to help, if you want help in deploying those solutions, there are ways that we can do that. So if you'd like to have a conversation about what Esri can do to help you deploy these capabilities in a more quick way, and access our experts that are here to kind of give you guidance, both technology-wise, but also from the emergency management side, we're happy to do that. And then the last thing I would say is, certainly if you want to connect to others in the community that are solving the same challenges that you are, let us know, right? We can certainly connect you through that extensive network of users. That's part of, I think, the benefit and joy of being here at Esri, is all of you as our users are really the ones that we're here to serve, right? So let us help you. Tell us how we can best do that. You'll find it in. So if you click the box, say, let's talk about that, I need some help beyond do it myself, let us know. We're there to help you get results as quickly as possible. We certainly don't want to delay with giving the impending deadline of hurricane season, as Jeff likes to remind me every day. So with that, we do want to take some questions. We've answered a bunch throughout the webinar, so thank you for those of you who have been sending questions in. You'll find some of those results. We'll share a bit of those out. But I did have 2 questions here that I thought were really applicable broadly that I just want to take a minute and toss. So Lindsay, if you're online with us, I think this one is perfect for you. So Lindsay is technically involved in the back end of helping us build everything that you've seen and managing that process. And Lindsay, the question was, are the solution templates that we've seen today available in online and enterprise? Are there any limitations related to that? So do you want to just speak really highly at that point, and then we can follow up with some resources for folks as well?
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah. So the current solution is supported on ArcGIS Online, and it's also supported on ArcGIS Enterprise 10.7. One of the reasons is that new restructuring that we talked about, and the ability to archive and support all those kind of easier workflows to get up and ready for another event or incident, has to be built on that kind of latest and greatest technology.
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay. So online capable, 10.7 enterprise capable. If you're backwards in 10.6.1 or 10.6 or below, some of the stuff that we've shown today won't work as she just described. So if you have specific questions about that, certainly reach out at the end. We can give you guidance and kind of let you know where there's pathways to kind of get to that area. So thanks, Lindsay. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
The other question we got, I think, is really important is the question, can I get tech support for these solution templates? And I don't know if Lindsay or Walt, if you guys want to handle that, or I'm happy to, but I think that's a really important one for people to know about how to access tech support for what they've seen today.
That's right, they can contact tech support. All the solutions that we showed you today are supported. You will notice if you go to the solutions.arcgis.com page, when you scroll down to the emergency management page, then you can go into each individual solution. In there, you'll see requirements for them. Also the what's new every time we make changes to them, like the changes that Jeff just showed. You'll see those changes are reflected in the what's new section of it. So you'll get documentation on there. You'll also get tech support. So you can call your tech support and they'll help you with the questions you have for implementing them.
Yeah, thanks, Walt. I appreciate it. I think that's so important for people to know. I think that, yeah, we take this seriously, right? We realize that these are mission critical for you. And so we want to make sure that you know you can access tech support at any point on that. So thanks, Walt, for that. All right, so we've got a couple minutes left. I just want to give you some next steps where to go. So we're going to follow this today. You'll get an email from us, again, with a bit of resource links, some places you can go to find a bit more detail to dig into the solutions themselves. But you may be looking for ways that you can train up and do this on your own. So there are three things I want to call your attention to. The first is certainly the website, Emergency Management Solutions. So if you go to esri.com/emergency, that'll take you to the Emergency Management Operations website. You'll see the story that we just told at a higher level. You can see some of the capabilities. And if you want to talk to somebody, you need help at that point, there's a place where you can request assistance right there, right? Ask for some help to have somebody call you and follow up. The next two are about training. So the Esri regional user conferences that are ongoing, there's a URL, esri.com/events. Will take you to the website where you can see all of our regional user conferences. These are scattered across the US domestically here. They are places where we are conducting workshops and seminars related to emergency management and public safety in general. So if you attend any one of those, make sure you look on the agenda, find those, or if you have a question about a local user conference that's coming near you and you want to make sure that you're plugged in, let us know. We'll make sure that you're connected and you know when and where to go sit in the room to do hands-on and learn a bit more about this. And then finally is the National Security and Public Safety Summit. This is on the front end of the Esri User Conference. So for those of you that join us in San Diego in July, this year we have our user conference just after the 4th of July here in the US. So we'll start on the 6th and 7th with the National Security and Public Safety Summit in San Diego at the Hilton Bayfront right next to the Convention Center. It is a time for us as a community and public safety to come together. There's a dedicated session on emergency management operations, so you'll be able to dig into that. There's also some training that we'll be doing throughout the week through workshops. So again, if you have questions about that, want to know where to get plugged in during the user conference or the National Security and Public Safety Summit, let us know. We'll guide you to the right place. And as Walt said, I think the last two things are so important. The questions, ideas, suggestions, we need to hear from you, right? So thank you for those of you who provided feedback. Take the time at the closing part of this webinar to give us a little more detail about what you'd like us to be working on, but feel free to email me. We'll triage that, we'll send it out, we'll get the right people engaged here, but your feedback, your guidance, and your requirements are what we work against. So please let us know if you have any suggestions about where we should be focusing, what we can do to make these better and work for you in a more positive way. And with that, our next webinar, so come back and join us. So we're going to continue this series for emergency management. The next one will be in July, just before the user conference. So we'll look forward to seeing you there and hopefully to see most of you in San Diego. We'd love to meet you in person, spend some time. The team that you've met today will be there standing in the booth, so you can come by and spend some time with us, get to know us. And I'd love to hear your stories about what you're working on and how we're supporting. So with that, I want to say thanks to Jeff, to Walt, to Lindsay for joining us today. Thank all of you for spending your time with us this morning and this afternoon. Again, let us know if you have questions. We're here to help. So with that, we'll see you on the next webinar. Thanks for joining.